You're watching World Insight. Still to come. In the world of geopolitical tension, we meet a Canadian who has been working and living in China and who is now trying to use comedy to deal with cultural shocks. Will he bomb his cross-cultural comedy or earn a mic drop? Welcome back. This is World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Mark Rowswell, or Da Shan, is a Canadian culture ambassador to China. He's been trying out stand-up comedy for years and this time bringing many of his peers and partners with him onto the stage and certainly laughter to the audience. As someone who's been immersed in multicultural environments, Rowswell's comedy stems from cultural shock, but does not stop there. How does Rowswell understand cultural differences and how does he see traditional Chinese culture? Meanwhile, how is he trying to digest the poetry from ancient China and interpret them in modern societies? Let's take a look at my conversation with him. I'm so happy to be joined by Mark Rowswell, entertainer and cultural ambassador, but really a longtime friend of this program, and shall I say, of China also. Mark, good to see you.
It's so nice to be back on the program. I think the last time we did it was 2019 for Spring Festival.
Absolutely. I still remember dearly of that moment. I'm excited for you about the live performance. You know, the Da Shan Live, where you bring the comedians in Canada and try to perform all over the country. You're having now a tour, right?
Yeah, so I just resumed performing in September of last year. So what I enjoy most is doing live performing in small theaters where you can have a close interaction with the audience. And that just hasn't been possible until a few months ago. So we started in September. And now it's so busy. Today I'm in Montreal. 2 nights ago I was performing in Toronto, and we're doing this Da Shan Live, bringing together a bunch of friends. It's called Da Shan and Friends now, because nowadays there's actually quite a lot of Chinese language comedy around North America and around the world. There's Tokoshou. Chinese stand-up has really taken off. So bringing those all together with me, and we're doing this show, and it's so nice to be back on stage after the pandemic.
What was it like for the very first time after the pandemic, finally on the stage?
So that's actually the origin of the whole Da Shan and Friends idea, because I used to do the show that was just called Da Shan Live, and it's just me sort of doing comedy and stand-up comedy for an hour or so, maybe with one guest or something. And I just thought, when we come back from the pandemic, holy smokes, I haven't performed for 2.5 years. I'm really nervous and everything. I need some people to help me out. So I brought in, I think you know as well, Jesse Appel is now living in Los Angeles, and it was so successful. I just thought, I don't want to do a show by myself anymore. Let's just keep doing Da Shan and Friends.
So now you're a manager of some sort. What's it like to quote unquote manage all of these personalities, you know?
So now I'm producing my own shows, and it's been really exciting. The big one this year, I've already booked the Vancouver Playhouse for April 29th in Vancouver, and that's a 700-seat theater. So, a lot of pressure, but I've got 4 months to get ready for that. And up until, what we've been doing now is sort of more 150, 200 seats. And every show is a little bit different, and we're building it a step at a time. So I'm a performer, but also the producer of the show, really enjoying it.
You haven't told me what it's like to manage all of these personalities.
It's fun. It is a lot of work, but everyone is so happy to be performing. And a lot of these younger performers, they're the age of my own children, really. So, I'm 57 now, so these are all people that are my children's age, and they're really happy to be with me, and I'm really happy to have them because they help take the burden off me. I can do my bit, but I don't have to do a whole hour and a half. So actually, it's much more fun that way. And we've been doing all kinds of different styles. I play the bass, and I do kwaibar.
The clappers.
And we're doing poetry, we're doing music, we're doing comedy, we're doing qu sort of traditional Chinese performing arts. We're doing modern stand-up comedy. It's all together. it's kind of strange, you know, as I put together the show, I think, wow, this is really weird. Like all these parts, they
Yeah.
don't seem to fit, but with me, somehow they all come together. And I realized it's because it's all language arts. It's all about our language and culture and different forms coming together.
When you are talking about this, it made me realize that you have, as cultural ambassador, that's an official title, but you know, just you yourself as a person has been smoothly swimming in different cultures, at least Chinese culture, Western culture, you know, where your hometown is, Canada. So there has been so much discussion, Mark, recently about cultures as we are
Yeah.
searching for solutions about the future because we are now all in trouble. So,
Yeah.
how do you see your understanding of a culture that you lived for a long time in, for example, the Chinese culture, and being away from it because you've been away from China for about 3 years? Yeah, something
For
like
the
that.
pandemic, yeah.
Yeah, and looking from a little bit afar, and now maybe likely to join again. So, how do you see your observations and understanding of this culture evolution rise, or should I say evolve over the years? Mark.
So first of all, although physically we've been apart, I feel now it's been easier to keep connected because of social media and everything. I mean, you know, even though I'm doing
But
these live
sometimes it
shows
could
where
be
I'm performing today,
superficial.
social media does give us a way to do the live performing and keep in touch with a broader audience through social media. So I'm still been very active on all the Chinese social media platforms and doing videos during the pandemic. I think the main thing for me though is that you know, people often ask me about cultural difference and what are the differences, and we're always focusing on difference, difference, difference. And for me, I think because I'm a non-Chinese performer who performs almost exclusively in Chinese, for me, it's always about finding similarity, finding common ground, finding a connection, finding things that we share. It just seems to me we talk about difference all the time, and we very rarely talk about the similarity and the shared experience. And you know, there's, like you said,
We take it for
the
granted, the
shared problems that we
similarities.
have now.
We take it for granted, the similarities.
But I think because we spend so much time talking about the differences, sometimes we don't appreciate the similarities. Because if you spend all of your energy talking about difference, you get this idea that how the difference between cultures is black and white, when it's really not. We all live within shades of gray. And you know, so for instance, even though I'm in Canada now, I'm performing to the Chinese community in Canada, which is a very large community. And the audiences that I'm performing, these are people that have come from China in the last 5 or 10 years. They all know me from CCTV. So sometimes it doesn't feel like that I'm that far away.
Right now, you've been working on a series of poem reading, you know, ancient Chinese poems. You try to make small social media segment and present it online to your audience all over the world. You know, there are some poetry from ancient China that is very much based on the history of that time. But of course, it could also be interpreted by various cultures, by anybody. So how do you like this process of learning and also communicating through poetry?
Again, there, what I'm trying to find is the similarity. So it's classical Chinese language, so there's a huge language barrier. But once we get past the barrier, I think you can appreciate a lot of the sentiment. It's sort of the human experience. Everyone during the pandemic, we've all had various projects that we've worked on, hobbies, because we haven't been able to, we've been all stuck at home and everything, working on hobbies. And two of my hobbies for the pandemic has really been to spend more time learning about traditional Chinese poetry, classical poetry, and also to practice the bass. And so now, now I've actually been able to bring the two together because we actually do a singing version of a famous drinking song by Li Bai, Chang Jin Jiu. And I think, so for instance, if you take that poem, sure, there's a specific historical background and there are characters, and a Western audience wouldn't necessarily know the specific background, but the emotions or the feeling that they express, if you can get past the language barrier, are things that people, that everyone can appreciate, I think. So I try to do that through my performance. What I try to do is try to bring out the emotion behind the poem, because emotion is something that we can feel. We don't need language to feel the emotion. And so that's again, that's what I'm trying to do, is find, even though this is really exotic, far removed from Western culture, a huge language barrier, but when we break through those barriers, we find there's sort of a common expression, a common feeling to it.
Okay, I would love to throw in an example because I've been listening and watching your segments recently. One is from the ancient poet Su Shi, and
Yeah,
his very well-known poetry, which is called
yeah.
定风波.
That poem, one of the things I like about that poem as well is that a lot of traditional poetry is very sad and very deep, very melancholy. And he was a person who loved life and he loved to eat and to drink and he loved poetry um, and so I've been working with another a common friend of ours and then also a common guest, a regular guest on this show, David Moser, who's a wonderful pianist, jazz pianist, and he does these improvisations. And sometimes I listen, he'll send me a short improvisation and I'll listen to it and I'll find a poem that fits in it. And we found this one, his improvisation, and 定风波 by Su Shi. You know, sometimes the titles of the poems don't make sense because, of course, this is not actually a poem. It's a lyric. It's a song lyric. So sometimes the title is actually the name of the lyric. Mm-hmm. Well, the music has been lost to time, but the lyrics still remain. And we've now with David Moser have brought new music into it. And the thing I like about that is that it's such an unrestrained sort of enjoyment of life. Like it's literally talking about how I don't care if it rains or shines. I'm going to enjoy my life to the fullest.
Before you explain more, I want our audience just to watch a little bit of excerpts of that to get their feel of what the poetry is about.
莫听穿林打叶声，何妨吟啸且徐行。竹杖芒鞋轻上马，谁怕？一蓑烟雨任平生。料峭春风吹酒醒，微冷。山头斜照却相迎。回首向来萧瑟处，归去，也无风雨，也无晴。
Actually, Mark, I'm very impressed by the evolution of your emotions throughout this poem. There's quite some drama in the changes of moods there, right?
So he's explaining about how it's raining and everything, but I don't care. I've got my raincoat and the sun comes out and now it's shining. And I don't care if it rains or shines. I'm just going to enjoy my life. And, you know, as I was recording it, that was totally improvised. But as I was recording it and I finished, I just thought I should wink. So I gave a little wink like that.
I love that.
I was really pleased afterwards because sort of a renowned scholar of Tang poetry wrote to me afterwards and he said, you know, that wink to me, that tells me that you understood the poem, because a lot of people wouldn't think I'm going to recite a poem. You know, we all get very serious and everything, but that's not a serious poem. It's a very joyful, love of life kind of poem. And I thought it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek too. I just thought I'll give a little wink, and it just happened that was the right thing to do. So again, that's about finding the feeling behind the poem, right? Trying to bring that feeling out.
Mark Rowswell, Da Shan, thank you. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Mark Rowswell from Canada. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insight or check out our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.